Hello and welcome to the 1010 podcast with Andrea McKee. On this podcast, we zoom in really micro and we zoom out really macro because the goal here is to say, am I on the right path for my life and how I want my life to go? And if I am, then let's keep going, let's keep doing it. And if I'm not, then let's be brave enough to pivot. Because as far as we know, we have one life to live. And that is now. So there is no better time than now to choose what is next. The reason I am calling this podcast 1010 is because I am a mirror of you and you are a mirror of me. And every single person can learn something from another person. And when we are open to reflecting on our lives, man, that's when the good stuff happens. P.S. 1010 is my birthday, so it is my favorite number. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to the 1010 podcast. I am so excited to talk to you about comparison and how it destabilizes us and how life isn't fair. The reason why I'm excited about this is because I've had lots of experiences recently that show me that exact lesson, and I wanted to share it with you. First, we are going to rewind to the first time I remember comparing myself to someone else. So when I was in first grade, I had a friend, my best friend, her name was Leah, and every single day her hair was done to the nines, perfectly braided in some fantastic way, like a crown around her head, like a braided crown around her head, or like a Dutch braid with the braid on top, like French braid, but opposite, or a French braid, or she had like all these curls. And then she was dressed to the nines as well, just very, very put together. And I remember thinking, wow, I am not that put together. And I wish that my mom did my hair like that. And I wish I wore as pretty of clothes as she does. But I was never one of those mean girls. So it never took me to a place of jealousy where I was mean to somebody for that. The next time I remember comparing myself to someone was in fourth grade. We moved schools and lived with my grandparents for half of the school year, I think. And we were building a little wood cabin on our 10 acres in Idaho. And my best friend, Stephanie, her dad owned a car dealership and they had lots of money and they had a really nice car and they had a really big house. I remember the first time I went to her house and saw a chandelier in her house, even the entryway of her house. I was just shocked at how beautiful a house could be. I'd never seen anything like it. And I remember these experiences kind of I would feel small after them, oh my gosh, am I worthy of this? But she and I would just go on being best friends like normal. I mean, we just like to do the same things together. And so, and she had her ears pierced. I was very jealous of that. I was not allowed to get my ears pierced and didn't until I was 24 years old and in Scotland. But after that, the next time I remember comparing myself to someone was in sixth grade. There was this girl named Megan, and she was so casually cool. Everything about her was pretty and cool, and she was so funny, and everyone liked her, and she was so confident to talk to everyone. Unlike me, who was very afraid to talk to anyone remotely cool. And this was because I was very insecure. I was very the very definition of insecure is when you are self-focused. And honestly, I had a pretty treacherous, emotionally abusive home, but I'm not, who's to say that the other people didn't either? I don't know, but it affected me in a way that I became very quiet, and I was very worried about talking to anybody who seemed like they had any kind of social authority, aka the cool kids. And I remember this time we were sitting in the library and there were tables with chairs and 4 to 6 people could fit at a table. And I remember kind of just looking at her. I was just observing her because I just observed a lot. I was just observing her to see what was she doing and what is she like and how does she get to be the way she is. And I I remember just watching her, and she looked over at me and she goes, "What are you staring at?" And I like immediately looked away, and I felt so small, and I felt so like intimidated and red-faced, and of course like just so embarrassed. And then I kind of realized, okay, just because you're really cool and pretty and smart and everybody likes you doesn't mean you're also nice. Doesn't mean you're kind, doesn't mean you're empathetic, doesn't mean anything, at least about the things that I did value. I did value those things. And so suddenly I had this new perspective of like, okay, well, now I know a little bit more of what she's like. And fair enough, from her angle, it's like if somebody's just sitting there staring at you and you're a confident person, you're like, what is going on? Like, why are you just looking at me? I mean, I get it. It probably was weird that I was just looking at her. But in my mind, I was sort of like calculating, like, is it possible for me to somehow eventually ever be as cool and likable as she is? And, maybe it was also like my comparison stemmed from like hearing my dad always comparing my mom to other women that he saw out, oh, this woman is so skinny and beautiful. Like, why can't you just lose your weight or whatever? Like he would say things like this to my mom. So I think inherently there was this comparison experience in my household where I very much did experience life a lot from what felt like the angle of my mom. And so whatever sort of hardship or trauma she was going through, I definitely experienced that in a sort of from a removed place with her. And just as like another couple of crazy things that I remember about Megan is that I swear she had a new pair of jeans like every day for like 30 days. And all of the pairs of jeans were really cool looking and nice. And I was just like, how can someone have this many clothes? Like I literally imagined her closet was so full. And then like I remember she kind of walked with like her feet kind of like out toward the side, and I thought, oh, that must be really cool. I'm going to try to do that. So I would like intentionally try to walk with my toes pointing outward. And I think about it now and I'm like, wow, like I just was trying so hard to be seen as cool or liked or accepted. But the interesting thing about it is that the next year in 7th grade, I got asked by the guy that everybody wanted to go out with. Like he, through his friend, asked me out in a note. And I was like, because I just thought he must be joking with me. Like, of course he wouldn't want to go out with me. And turns out the whole thing was real. And he actually did want to go out with me, but I was terribly insecure. And that's actually where kind of like this next thought comes in. So when comparison has sort of lived in me for a long time, but once I moved to Georgia, a lot of the comparisons that I had felt in my life kind of, I leveled up. You know how I said that in a previous episode that kind of every new place or experience that I had in my life felt like an upgrade to the previous one. So in this particular case, we had moved to Georgia, and because I had valued things like kindness and genuine, genuine like care for another person. But I also really valued people with a nice house, people with a big house, people with money. Those were things that I aspired to. Like, I mean, no matter what I tried, I wanted those things, and those were things that I valued and sort of put people who had them on a pedestal. Am I proud of myself that that's how I have often viewed my life? No, but that's just genuinely how I have experienced my life. So when we moved to Georgia and we lived in this beautiful neighborhood and we had a 5,000 square foot house and I had these 2 beautiful children, and my life for me was like from the outside in, like, and even from the inside out, I was like, I'm living the dream. Like, this is exactly what I've always wanted. I always said when I was in high school that I was going to have a big house and that I was going to have an amazing husband and beautiful children. And now I do. And I also really valued education. So when I got my master's degree, I suddenly felt like I could kind of, belong to these circles of people who had, who valued intellect and interesting conversations. And these were things that really I enjoyed. And I was always admiring people who participated and felt confident in these kinds of scenarios, because it took me so long to get to that point. I mean, I couldn't even look people in the eyes until I was like in 10th grade, because I was born with a cataract in my left eye. So I had this like white circle over the black pupil of my left eye, and my eye would frequently sort of like wander off, and so it wouldn't track oftentimes with my other one. So I was really embarrassed to like show people my eyes. So when I would talk to people, I would just look down a lot, or I'd look to the side. I wouldn't really look people in the eyes. So to this day, I really have to pay attention when I'm talking to people to actually look them in the eyes. Not that I'm trying to divert my eyes anymore like I used to, but just that like I get distracted when I look at people in the eyes because I'm busy like looking at them. I see a pattern emerging. Apparently I can't look at people without like studying them deeply. So anyway, I ended up like talking to this girl in my school, and she was looking at me in the eyes when we were in 9th grade, and she looks at me, she goes, "Oh my gosh, what is going on with your eye?" And I was like, "Oh, I was born with a cataract in my left eye." She goes, "Oh my gosh, that is so cool." And I was taken back. I'm like, "What do you mean it's cool?" I'm like, "I can't see out of it." And she goes, "It looks so cool. Oh my gosh, I've never noticed it before." And I'm like, "You haven't?" Because I just assume people meet me and they automatically notice. Well, I've talked to this girl so many times, but she had never noticed it before. I mean, we'd been going to the same school for like 3 years together. How could she not have noticed it? But she, for the first time, noticed it. So it changed the way I perceived myself. I thought, well, I guess people can't always notice it the first time they talk to me. And just even when they do notice, it doesn't mean they think it's weird, or like they might actually think it's cool. And I kind of started to try to change the way I viewed myself and my eye, and I started really working on that kind of programming that was very deeply rooted in me. And so when I go to these places of like comparison and insecurity, there are a lot of layers there. And my brother was kind of like this too. Like he was very kind of casually cool, not like this, not like me in that way, but he was very casually cool, like very like knew he belonged in different places. It seemed like he very easily made friends. He was very easily like the liked one. And I kind of realized, okay, like I want to be more outgoing. I want to be more out there. And I did a lot of work on myself, and I'll kind of go into that in a different episode. But I kind of want to talk a little bit more about these insecurities that continued to pop up. So like after Georgia, I kind of thought, while I was there, I was like, I think for the first time, I feel like I've leveled up. Like if Bill Gates walked into my neighborhood, I would not be starstruck. I would be like, "Hey, like, let's have a conversation about what you're working on." And I thought, like, if Taylor came to hang out with me, Taylor Swift, I'd be like, "Hey girl, like, what is going on? Look at the success you've had." Like I, for the first time, could see these people as people and not just as their achievements or their wealth. And I think that being able to see people as people is one of the first steps of being able to see yourself as yourself. I mean, if you can see yourself as yourself, you can also see yourself like other people as people with just real things that they've gone through. And, moving on from Georgia, like that was a big kind of milestone for me socially. I mean, I had been pretty outgoing, and I had kind of gotten over the hump of like everybody's cooler than me, and I was just like, I deserve to be in all these circles, even if I didn't necessarily feel like it until I got to Georgia. But after that, we moved to California, and that was a little bit of a jolt back for me. I had gone through so much. I had lost a baby. I was now a mother of 3. I had gone through a big faith transition. I really had undergone a lot of just like personal overhauls, and we moved, and I really didn't have a support system for all the things that I genuinely needed, but was too overwhelmed to figure out. So I would make a friend or two, and those friends, like if they were not able to show up in the way that I was kind of used to people showing up for me, it really threw me for a loop. And there was this one friend in particular where I was just like, I couldn't quite read her. We would plan things, or she wouldn't want to plan things, wouldn't want to necessarily reschedule. And I was like, well, what's wrong with me? I wouldn't say that, but I just kind of internalized it, became pretty insecure, had this like seeming fallout experience when like our, the biggest event of the year, our school auction, our elementary school auction for my kids. And then some of the moms were like not really playing nice, being exclusive, kind of like dropping me like a hot potato, not there. I just really didn't feel like I had anybody. And I kind of got into this like social anxiety for the first time in my life. I genuinely felt really anxious. I didn't want to go to school, pick up and drop off. I didn't want to experience like chit-chatting with people on a surface level. Like I just needed my old friends that I had had my whole life, rather than all these people that I felt like were just playing a game. And what I eventually came to realize was that everybody was in the same boat of insecurity, and they were all trying to get their own leg up and willing to like let people go just to get their own leg up. I kind of let myself be that sacrificial lamb. And, my husband and I ended up going to the school auction that year, and we had a fantastic time. I was like, I don't want to go with anybody but you. I don't want it to just be the girls. Like, I just I don't trust these people. And literally for the first time in my entire life, because I never did the girl drama stuff that happens in middle school and high school or college. Like I never did that girl drama. I always stayed out of it because I could see it as it was. And I was like, that is not my thing. If people were showing like signs of like too much drama, I was like, I'm out. But somehow these friends I thought were my real friends, and then they weren't showing up like my real friends typically did. So I just was like, okay, now I get it. And now I'm going to keep all these people at a distance. I'm going to try to find my real friends. And if I can't find any real friends, I'm just going to go back to all my old friends from a distance and just have old friends. But because I was already in this space of insecurity and social anxiety, and like, I really didn't want to interact with anyone anywhere. I was like, I got to get out of my head and into my body. So I started doing things that would help me with that. After this experience. So we had some visitors come, and I thought had a good time. But when these visitors, after having spent a weekend with us, family, I will not say who, one of these family members snubbed me. And I was like, I couldn't read it. I could not read her. And I was like, I don't know what's going on. And then, my husband got the same vibe. And I'm like, what's going on? Like that, if we both got the same vibe, then it can't just be like, we're in our heads thinking about this. And it turns out it actually was a snub, which we found out a few months later. And, but in the meantime, right after that experience, I was like, I got to get out of my head. I'm going to go write a song about this, get all my feelings out. So I went downstairs to my studio and I wrote the song Insecure, which is out everywhere. And I actually want to remix it because, not remix it, but I want to kind of change the levels on it a little bit, because it's a little bit hard to hear all the lyrics. But honestly, by the time I got done writing that song in about an hour, I was in my studio dancing. I was so on cloud 9. And I thought, you know what? No one can get me down. I have my songwriting that totally sees me. I was able to put all of my thoughts and feelings from all of these social events and these women that I thought were my friends here in California. And then this family member who someday I'm like, what is going on? All of these experiences are literally happening one right after another, but it taught me that I'm not the only one dealing with this crap. Like, everybody's got their own insecurities. Everybody's trying to be seen and heard and understood. And when they don't, they might act like, as Mel Robbins says in her book, they might act like an 8-year-old, like this woman did when she snubbed us after we had just spent a great weekend showing her all around where we're at, making nice food for them, genuinely trying to get to know them better and putting our best foot forward and in the most genuine of ways. And it taught me that we are so easy to kind of revert to our immature, lack of emotional intelligence sides of ourselves. Like we very much will revert when we aren't feeling seen or heard or understood. So this is what she did to me. And I realized that I got to choose how I reacted to that. I could respond, which I did by writing a song, or I could react by like writing her a hate text, which of course I wanted to do, but did not do. Instead, I went and I, in a healthy way, got my thoughts and emotions out in song, and then ended up loving the song. And to this day, I just listened to it yesterday. I'm like, man, that is a good song. And it's one of my favorites because for the first time, I was able to just tell people about how insecure I've been in so many ways in my life. And I'm not the only one. This is a very normal human experience. You're not broken if you're feeling insecure. And you know what? Another way that this showed up for me recently was like how easy it is for me to just want to give up on something that I'm working on because once again, comparison creeps in. So my husband and we had 3 boys, but 2 of our boys were playing Catan, the game, and the board game where you kind of like share resources and you have to negotiate, and it's a bit of a game of luck to some degree because it depends on who's like what number is being rolled all the time. Well, my settlements and cities were not on the ones that were getting rolled, the numbers that were getting rolled all the time. So it was like everybody was getting an 8 and everyone was getting a 5. Well, turns out I was not on, my settlements and cities were not in either of those numbers. So I was literally getting passed up all the time for getting resources in order to even play the game. So I'm sitting there and like 1 or 2 rounds, right? I can handle that. But it was like 12 rounds. And I'm like, come on. And I'm trying so hard to be a good sport, like an example for my kids. But I was like, oh my gosh, this is so painful. And at some point, after the like 12th time of being passed over, I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm done. Like, I'm not playing this game. This is pointless for me. Like, I'm literally wasting my time. And my husband was like, hey, this is really what you want to be showing our kids, that you like give up when something's not going your way? And I'm like, fine. Okay. So I'm going to go get a book and I'm going to read the book while I'm waiting for my numbers to come up so I can actually get resources. And so I can actually play the game. So I went and got a book, Mel Robbins' Let Them, which I've been very slowly but surely reading through. And when I got it, I was like, okay, I open up, I kid you not. I'm reading this book. I'm on like, I haven't marked where I last read, and I open up to the new chapter, and in the like first paragraph, she goes, sometimes you are going to get dealt the worst hand of cards. And I was like, oh my gosh. She goes, life's not fair. You're the problem. You need to stick with it. And I was like, oh my gosh, how is this happening? Like, she's literally talking to me right now. And so I just like burst out laughing. I said, you guys have to listen to this. And she's talking all about how like sometimes you're not going to be the one feeling like the luckiest in the room. Sometimes you're the one who's not going to be feeling like everything is going your way. Sometimes you're going to be dealt the actual worst hand, and there's nothing you can do about it except have a good attitude and like focus on what you do have. And I realized that it really does come down to gratitude, because in that moment I could be like, well, at least I have a settlement in a city. And you know what? Even if I don't win this game, I'm still having a good time with my family. But if my idea of success is winning the game, or if my idea of fun is winning the game, well, then I'm going to be sorely disappointed. But if my idea of having a good time and having a meaningful experience is just spending time with my husband and kids, and then I don't have to be super competitive, then I'm going to end up having a great time and looking at that experience as having been a meaningful one. Just like if I'm like going through life thinking that the only ways that I can be successful or feel like I have a significance in this world is if I have a big house and like, money, then I might find myself sorely disappointed. So if our standards of comparison are such that they are maybe unrealistic or just in general, like not focused on what we do have, then we become destabilized. We become people who have social anxiety. And in my case, I'm not speaking for everybody. I'm speaking specifically from my experience. If I focus on what I don't have as a means of meaning in my life, or a means of success, or a means of happiness, then I might be sorely disappointed if I'm not just focused on showing gratitude and like resonance in what I do currently enjoy, because my life is pretty damn good. And turns out there is always something to be unhappy about, and there's always something to complain about, or there's always something to be incredibly joyful and grateful for. Literally all in how you spin it. So comparison destabilizes us. It destabilized me as a first grader. Instead of focusing on how grateful I was that my mom, made me peanut butter and honey toast every day after school, and how wonderful my mom was to like make us lollipops together, and how wonderful, it was that I had a best friend in 4th grade, and wow, that's incredible that their family has that. Like, instead of focusing on what I didn't have all those times, or like, I think back then I probably was more of I was noticing things, and I don't think I was really putting myself down. I was just noticing stuff. But the older I got, the more I really kind of found that insecurity really affecting me. And it did affect me, as a child, because I did put other people who were very outgoing or successful or had money, or who were very socially comfortable. I put them on a pedestal. But I also, at the same time, learned a lot from them, because I was observing them constantly. And I was thinking, how can I be a little bit more like the thing that I admire in them? And so as I grew older, I do see myself as a patchwork quilt of all of the people that I admired in my life, who lifted my aspirations to something more. So comparison isn't always bad. Like, if you dwell in comparison and you put yourself down in comparison and dwell in that, then that actually is harmful and destabilizing. But if you see someone and what they're doing and you have a sense of envy, that shows you what you want. And I have found myself becoming, in many ways, in good ways, like the people that I admire, and genuinely see myself as a conglomeration of all the people I've ever admired in my life, including my grandmother, who was just such a genuinely loving and heartwarming person. What I have found is that by using healthy means to process the feelings that come up for me, and in my case, sometimes songwriting, sometimes going for a hike and talking it out to nature. Sometimes it's yelling in my car to myself, not like at myself, but just like at the universe. There are ways to handle this, to like just let the emotions come through and just exist. And then, because usually they'll pass. And once they do, then we just move on. We just continue on in gratitude for where we are right now, in who we have in our lives, in what we have, in how we can continue to grow into our best selves. And that is where the magic of having people in our lives who are a few steps ahead in many ways, or a few steps behind that we can mentor. Having many kinds of people in our lives is where the magic happens of us continuing to grow and develop in ways that we need to. So the next time you see someone that has something that you want, just remember, that's teaching you something about yourself. It doesn't mean that you're not successful. It means nothing other than, oh, that's something I could see in my life. Remember that we are meaning-making machines, and we get to decide what things mean to us. So let it just mean that it's something that you like. Oh, good to know. That's information. It doesn't need to destabilize us. And if it does destabilize us, use a healthy means, whether it's creativity or hike or something to get out to just like ground you in your current reality. Name 12 things that you have that you're thankful for. I earlier this year was writing literally every day. At the end of last year and early this year, every day I was writing 50 things I was thankful for. 50, not 3. You know how they say like write 3 things you're thankful for at the end of the day. I was like, nope, I am going hard on this thing because I want to notice everything good in my life. And guess what? It was magnificent. Those journals, there's journal entries of like the 50 things I was thankful for. That grounded me. That made me see every single night what I have and how grateful I am for it. Thanks for hanging out. If this episode resonated with you and you think that someone else might enjoy it, please send it along. I would love to grow this podcast and I need your help. So, another day, another 10-10. You are on the right path. You are exactly where you should be right now. Let's keep moving up. Bye.